You have probably felt it. The world continues to function normally, but something invisible has shifted. As if the stage is still standing, the actors are still speaking, yet the script underneath has quietly been rewritten. Imagine an old clock hanging on a wall. At first glance, it marks time as it always has. But inside, its gears have been replaced. The ticking is almost imperceptible. Only those who truly listen notice that the rhythm is no longer the same. That is precisely the sensation many spiritually aware individuals are experiencing now, a structural change in the very fabric of reality. Texts attributed to Thoth, especially those popularized in the 20th century as the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, are not historically recognized by mainstream Egyptology as authentic ancient Egyptian documents. It is important to state this clearly. They emerge in modern esoteric traditions and represent later interpretations. However, symbolically, they carry immense power. They represent the archetype of consciousness that transcends eras, observes cycles, and understands the hidden mechanics of creation. In historically verifiable Egyptian tradition, Thoth is associated with writing, wisdom, mathematics, and the measurement of time. In later Hermetic traditions, he becomes a symbol of cosmic mind, the intelligence that understands the invisible laws governing both matter and spirit. Here, we will not treat mythology as literal historical fact, but as symbolic language expressing universal principles. And this is precisely where science begins to converse with myth. Quantum physics, particularly in interpretations concerning the role of the observer, presents something profoundly unsettling. Subatomic particles do not exhibit fixed behavior until measured. In experiments such as the double-slit experiment, the act of observation changes the outcome. This does not mean the human mind magically creates the universe in a simplistic sense. It means reality, at its most fundamental level, is probabilistic and responsive to interaction. Pause for a moment and reflect. If matter at its core is a field of possibilities, what happens when billions of conscious observers begin questioning the structure of reality itself? The so-called New Era does not need to be understood as a mystical event with a scheduled date. It can be interpreted as a paradigm shift, something that has occurred many times in human history. The transition from a geocentric to a heliocentric worldview was a rupture of reality. The quantum revolution of the early 20th century was another. Every time humanity expands its understanding, an old conceptual timeline dissolves. What many refer to as Thoth's final message can symbolically be understood as a warning. Cycles do not end dramatically for those who are conscious. They simply become obsolete. Look around you. Institutions once considered solid are facing profound crises. Economic models, educational systems, social structures, everything seems under revision. At the same time, there is an exponential rise in interest in meditation, neuroscience applied to spirituality, popularized quantum physics, and expanded states of awareness. This is not cultural coincidence. It is a symptom of transition. And here lies the central question. Are you living as someone who still belongs to the old mechanism, or as someone who has already begun operating within a new frequency? If this reflection resonates with you, consider subscribing to this channel, not as an automatic gesture, but as a conscious commitment to expanding your own mental field. When you choose to engage with and share content that responsibly integrates science and spirituality, you help strengthen a more lucid collective field. From both a psychological and energetic perspective, that matters more than most people realize. Because consciousness is contagious. Neuroscience tells us that human beings possess mirror neurons. These allow us to internalize the emotional and behavioral patterns of others. On a larger scale, this means states of consciousness propagate socially. When a critical mass adopts a new perceptual framework, the collective reorganizes around it. This is where the metaphor of timelines becomes powerful. We are not speaking of cinematic parallel universes. We are speaking of trajectories of probability. With each emotional choice, each belief reinforced, each narrative you accept as true, you narrow or expand your future possibilities. The final message before a new era is not a secret hidden in ancient caves. It is an invitation to perceptual responsibility. Perhaps the greatest shift is not occurring in the sky, but in how you interpret the sky. Perhaps collapse is not destruction, but update. And perhaps the real question is not, when will the new era begin? But, in which frequency have you already decided to live? There is a subtle, yet decisive, difference between external change and perceptual change. Most people expect the new era to manifest as a visible event, a global revelation, a definitive collapse, a dramatic intervention. However, humanity's greatest transitions have always begun invisibly, in the realm of ideas, in the silent reorganization of collective consciousness. From a psychological standpoint, what we call reality is largely an interpretative construction. The brain does not see the world as it is, it builds a simulation based on sensory input, memory, and prior beliefs. Neuroscientists such as Anil Seth describe perception as a controlled hallucination. This does not mean the world does not exist, but that our experience of it is mediated by internal predictions. Consider the implications. If the brain constantly predicts and adjusts what it perceives, then deep beliefs function as reality filters. They do not merely interpret the world, they select which aspects of it will be prioritized. Two people can live in the same environment and experience entirely different worlds. This is where the metaphor of timelines becomes practical rather than mystical. A timeline does not necessarily mean a literal parallel universe. It can be understood as a trajectory of experiences shaped by repeated mental and emotional patterns. When someone internalizes scarcity, opportunities appear threatening. When someone internalizes expansion, possibilities emerge where obstacles once stood. Quantum physics, interpreted responsibly, does not claim that thoughts instantly create reality. What it demonstrates is that at the microscopic level, systems exist in superposition until interaction occurs. Metaphorically applied to human life, our choices function as probability collapses. When we act, we define direction. In this context, Thoth symbolizes not an external prophetic being, but the consciousness that understands cycles and deliberately chooses where to place attention. And attention is organized energy. Cognitive psychology shows that what we repeatedly focus on strengthens specific neural networks. This process, neuroplasticity, is scientifically verified. The more you reinforce a thought pattern, the more automatic it becomes. In simple terms, you literally train your brain to inhabit a particular line of experience. This leads to an uncomfortable question. If your current reality is partly the result of repeated patterns of perception and emotion, which patterns have you been feeding? Many desire a new external era without making the corresponding internal transition. They want peace while feeding constant indignation. They seek abundance while mentally reinforcing insufficiency. They desire expansion while clinging to past identity. Era transition requires coherence. In physics, coherence describes waves vibrating in synchronization, amplifying one another. In the human body, studies on heart coherence show that when heart rhythm, breathing, and mental focus synchronize, physiological balance and cognitive clarity increase. This is measurable, not mystical language. Now imagine applying this principle to your life as a whole. When thought, emotion, and action align, experience gains fluidity. When misaligned, friction emerges. The final message before the new era could be summarized this way: align yourself before the environment forces alignment. Because transitional environments pressure incoherent structures. This is true in biology, economics, and psychology. Systems that fail to adapt collapse or reorganize. Perhaps the discomfort so many feel today is not personal failure, but evidence of ongoing update. If this reflection is expanding your perspective, like this content and comment. I take responsibility for my frequency, not as an empty ritual, but as a conscious commitment. When you verbalize a decision, you activate neural circuits linked to intention and identity. When hundreds or thousands do the same, a symbolic collective reinforcement field forms. An era does not shift on the calendar. It shifts in repeated decisions. And each decision is an invisible point of divergence. There is something even more delicate in this process of transition: the danger of superficial spiritualization. Every time a new paradigm begins to emerge, it is also absorbed by the human ego. And the ego is extremely sophisticated. It can transform growth into superiority, awakening into rigid identity, expansion into comparison. Historically, whenever revolutionary ideas appeared, part of humanity used them as tools of symbolic power. Spirituality is not immune to this. When concepts such as frequency, vibration, manifestation, and multiverse become popular, they can either be understood as instruments of self-responsibility or distorted into mechanisms of escape from concrete reality. It is essential to distinguish between the two. Quantum physics does not validate fantasies of personal omnipotence. It describes phenomena at microscopic scales with mathematical rigor. When we use its principles as metaphors for human experience, we must do so with intellectual responsibility. Otherwise, we fall into a subtle trap, using scientific language to legitimize emotional denial. The new era is not an escape from reality. It is a deeper encounter with it. Psychologically speaking, avoidance mechanisms often disguise themselves as transcendence. For example, someone who refuses to confront unresolved trauma may say they are operating at a higher frequency to avoid uncomfortable emotional work. Someone who avoids financial responsibility may claim they are detached from material illusion. These narratives can sound elevated, but they are forms of dissociation. True expansion of consciousness increases clarity, not denial. If your spirituality makes you less capable of dealing with practical life, something is misaligned. Authentic integration makes you more present, more responsible, more coherent. It does not detach you from the world, it allows you to participate in it with deeper awareness. This is where the symbolic warning attributed to Thoth becomes powerful. The greatest danger before a new era is not ignorance. It is distortion. Ignorance is simply absence of knowledge. Distortion is misapplied knowledge. And misapplied knowledge can create greater confusion than no knowledge at all. Neuroscience shows that once a belief becomes part of identity, the brain defends it as if it were protecting survival. This is known as cognitive dissonance reduction. When confronted with contradictory evidence, many people do not update their worldview, they reinforce it. Now consider the implications in the spiritual context. If someone becomes attached to the identity of being awakened, they may resist any information that challenges their interpretation. This creates a new form of mental rigidity, disguised as enlightenment. The transition into a new era requires psychological maturity. It requires the ability to hold mystery without inventing certainty. It requires openness without losing discernment. It requires humility alongside expanded perception. Perhaps the final message before a new era is not, "You are becoming more powerful," but rather, "Become more honest." Honest about your shadows. Honest about your motivations. Honest about where you still seek validation disguised as transcendence. Because the frequency of the new timeline is not sustained by grandiosity, it is stabilized by coherence. And coherence begins with truth. Let me ask you something directly. Are you seeking awakening, or are you seeking escape? Pause with that question. The answer does not need to be shared publicly, but it must be shared internally. Because the new era is not entered through information accumulation. It is entered through integration. And integration demands courage. If there is a central point in the so-called final message before the new era, it relates to conscious manifestation, but not in the oversimplified way it has been popularized. For years, the idea that thoughts create reality has been repeated almost automatically. However, when examined with scientific maturity, the process is more sophisticated. Isolated thoughts do not magically reorganize the universe. What transforms trajectories is the consistent combination of belief, emotion, perception, and action. In cognitive psychology, beliefs function as internal maps. They guide decisions, often unconsciously. If someone deeply believes they do not deserve prosperity, that belief influences daily micro-choices, ignored opportunities, subtle self-sabotage, fear of visibility. It is not the universe punishing, it is the nervous system operating within a predictable pattern. Now connect this to complex systems theory. Systems do not change because of isolated events, but through accumulated small variations that reach a critical point. Water gradually heats until it reaches 100 degrees Celsius and changes state. The transformation appears sudden, but it was prepared by continuous process. Conscious manifestation works similarly. It is not about mechanically repeating phrases. It is about shifting your internal state consistently until your decisions, posture, tone of voice, and perception reorganize around a new identity. An identity is the true structuring force. Neuroscientifically, when you repeat an affirmation aligned with authentic emotion, you activate neural circuits reinforcing that self-image. If emotional coherence exists, meaning the body genuinely feels what the mind affirms, the brain begins updating its predictions about the future. But here is the crucial point: the body does not respond to empty words. It responds to states. Therefore, the symbolic message attributed to Thoth would not be, "Ask and you shall receive," but something more demanding. Become what you wish to experience. If you desire stability, become internally stable. If you desire abundance, cultivate expansive thinking and practical competence. If you desire conscious relationships, develop emotional maturity. This approach removes naive mysticism and returns real power to the individual. Inserted affirmation passage translated accordingly in natural English. The affirmations you choose to record, here in the comments or in your personal journal, are more than words. They are vibration codes. When you write, read, and consciously repeat them, you create an energetic circuit that reprograms the mind and anchors this new timeline in your field. That is why, when I invite you to comment, it is not merely to engage the video, it is to nourish the collective flow of consciousness. It is an anchoring exercise. Daily repetition transforms vibration into identity. If you wish to seal this understanding now, write, here or to yourself, "I consciously choose the frequency that creates my world." Repeat this phrase in the coming days, aloud or silently. Allow it to become the soundtrack of your vibrational field. Because each time you pronounce it, the universe reorganizes its particles around that new coherence. And gradually, everything that does not resonate with it begins to dissolve, naturally, without force. Scientifically, when you write an affirmation, you activate multiple brain regions: language, motor coordination, memory, and emotion, increasing neuroconsolidation. When you repeat it with emotion, you strengthen synaptic networks. When you act coherently, you stabilize the pattern. Spiritually, we may call this vibrational anchoring. Psychologically, cognitive restructuring. Both point to the same phenomenon: identity shapes experience. Perhaps the lost code was never hidden in ancient temples. Perhaps it was simply disciplined internal alignment. And that requires something rare: consistency. The new era will not be sustained by temporary enthusiasm. It will be sustained by individuals who repeatedly choose to operate in a new pattern, even while the external environment still echoes the old one. Now reflect honestly. Have you been repeating your limitations with the same intensity you wish to repeat your expansion? This is the crossroads. The highest timeline is not luck. It is sustained practice. There is a specific moment in every era transition when collective discomfort increases. Not because something went wrong, but because old structures begin losing energetic support. This phenomenon can be observed in history, social psychology, and even biology. When a system loses stability, it enters turbulence before reorganizing. In physics, this is studied in chaos theory and nonlinear dynamic systems. Small accumulated variations can lead to a critical point called bifurcation, a moment when the system can no longer return to its previous state and must assume a new configuration. Humanity appears to be at such a point. Observe the rise in social polarization, collective anxiety, and constant urgency. Data from the World Health Organization shows significant growth in anxiety and depression rates in recent decades. This is verifiable. Beyond economic and social explanations, there is also a perceptual dimension. We are exposed to unprecedented volumes of information, amplifying instability. The human brain evolved to handle immediate threats, not continuous global crises streamed in real time. This generates chronic sympathetic nervous system activation, a constant alert state. When millions operate under chronic stress, the social field becomes reactive. Now connect this to the symbolic concept of a collective quantum leap. In physics, a quantum leap occurs when an electron shifts energy levels abruptly without traversing intermediate space. Popularly, the term describes rapid transformation. While the analogy should not be taken literally at macro scale, it serves metaphorically. Systems can reorganize suddenly after sufficient tension accumulates. Perhaps we are living through that accumulation. Here is the essential point: each individual's internal state influences the collective field. This is not simplistic mysticism. Sociology and social psychology describe emotional contagion. Emotions spread in groups. Mental states propagate across physical and digital networks. Research shows mood, behavior, and even health patterns are influenced by social circles. In other words, your emotional stability is not merely personal. It is structural contribution. If you learn to regulate your nervous system, breathe consciously, reduce reactivity, you are not just improving your own life. You are decreasing the amplification of chaos within the collective field. This is silent responsibility. Perhaps the final message before the new era is less mystical than imagined. Perhaps it is a call to conscious self-regulation. Because a society composed of regulated individuals responds differently to crisis than one composed of internally disorganized individuals. So consider this crucial question. If everyone reacted to challenges exactly as you do, would the world become more stable or more chaotic? This requires radical honesty. Many desire global structural change without altering their own reaction patterns. They want conscious leaders but do not practice self-awareness. They want just systems but operate through daily micro-injustices. Era transition begins in micro-behavior. Conscious breathing. Less impulsive responses. Selective information consumption. Intentional silence. These practices seem simple, yet they profoundly affect the nervous system. When you regulate internally, you increase prefrontal cortex activity, linked to rational decision-making and empathy, and reduce amygdala dominance associated with fear. This is science applied to spirituality. Spiritually, you could say you are elevating your frequency. Neurobiologically, you are strengthening emotional regulation circuits. Different languages, same phenomenon. Perhaps the true portal of the new era is not a cosmic event, but the consolidation of a critical mass of emotionally mature individuals. If this resonates, write in the comments, "I choose stability in the midst of transition." The bifurcation has already begun. The question is, which direction are you feeding daily? Much is said about pineal gland activation, as if it were a mystical switch hidden in the center of the brain. Clarity is necessary here. The pineal gland is a real structure located between the two cerebral hemispheres. Its biologically recognized function is regulating circadian rhythms through melatonin production, related to sleep and biological timing. There is no scientific evidence that it is a literal, interdimensional portal. That interpretation belongs to symbolic and esoteric traditions. However, symbolism is not meaningless. From ancient traditions to philosophers like René Descartes, the pineal gland has been associated with the interface between mind and body. Modern neuroscience shows that deep meditative states alter brain activity patterns. Neuroimaging reveals changes in regions related to self-awareness, empathy, and time perception during consistent contemplative practice. In other words, while there is no mystical switch, there is something equally extraordinary. The human brain is malleable. Practices such as meditation, conscious breathing, and sustained focus increase connectivity between brain regions and strengthen the prefrontal cortex. This improves mental clarity, reduces emotional reactivity, and expands internal observation capacity. Spiritually, this may be described as expansion of consciousness. Scientifically, as neuroreorganization. When you train attention, you literally alter how you perceive reality. Expanded perception changes decisions. Decisions change trajectories. The new era does not depend on an external cosmic activation. It depends on the daily discipline of observing thoughts without automatically identifying with them. This is spiritual maturity. The ordinary mind functions automatically. Thoughts arise, emotions follow, and reaction occurs as if those thoughts were absolute truth. There is no space between stimulus and response. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl stated something profoundly relevant. Between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. Expansion of consciousness enlarges that space. When you begin perceiving thoughts as mental events, not fixed identity, internal reorganization occurs. Anxiety loses strength. Fear becomes observable. Impulsivity decreases. This is not fantasy transcendence. It is attentional training. Perhaps the greatest mistake is seeking extraordinary experiences while neglecting ordinary discipline. Many search for dramatic awakening while ignoring basics: regulated sleep, conscious nutrition, daily silence, structured study. Expanded consciousness requires physiological stability. The nervous system must be balanced to sustain heightened perception. Otherwise, what is interpreted as illumination may simply be emotional dysregulation. True activation increases functionality. If a spiritual practice reduces clarity, competence, or relational health, something needs revision. Real activation is integration. And integration requires consistency. Try something simple in the coming days. Reserve 7 minutes daily for absolute silence. No phone. No external stimulus. Just conscious breathing. Observe thoughts arising and dissolving. Do not fight them. Do not follow them. Just observe. This simple practice strengthens neural networks associated with metacognition, awareness of thinking. That is the beginning of perceptual freedom. If you do not govern your attention, who does? Corporations compete for it. Social platforms compete for dopamine. Sensational news captures your limbic system. In such an environment, maintaining conscious focus is revolutionary. Perhaps this is one of the symbolic keys of the final message: reclaim sovereignty over your own mind. Perception is the portal. Discipline is the key. When people speak of a new era, many imagine a distant, almost mythical future. Yet historical transitions never occurred outside concrete human experience. They happened when a sufficient number of individuals changed how they perceived, decided, and acted. There is a concept in biology called critical mass. When a certain proportion of elements within a system adopts a new pattern, the entire system reorganizes. This can be observed in ant colonies, chemical reactions, and cultural transformations. Not everyone needs to change simultaneously. A significant percentage stabilizing a new behavior is enough. Perhaps the new era functions similarly. Not as a celestial decree, but as the consolidation of a new cognitive emotional pattern. A humanity developing greater self-regulation, critical thinking, and integration between science and spirituality will inevitably create different social structures. The question shifts from, when will the world change? To, how many of us are genuinely committed to internal change? There is a dangerous tendency to expect leaders, governments, or external events to drive this transition. But systems reflect the average consciousness level of participants. If individuals operate through fear and impulsivity, structures mirror that. If they operate through discernment and emotional maturity, structures evolve. The portal is symbolic. It is not a luminous hole in the sky. It is a psychological threshold. The moment you choose not to repeat the old automatic pattern, the instant you interrupt impulsive reaction and select aligned response. When you take responsibility rather than project blame, this portal opens multiple times daily. Each micro-choice is a crossing. Perhaps the final symbolic message is this: Do not wait for extraordinary signs. Become extraordinarily conscious in ordinary choices. The portal is not spectacle. It is choice. And every time you choose coherence, you cross it. There is a silent question that accompanies every profound transition. Who are you becoming while the world changes? Most people invest energy trying to predict future scenarios, economics, technology, crises, collapses. Yet the most decisive variable receives the least attention, the internal state of the one moving through change. Throughout history, great transformations revealed two parallel movements. One group reacted with fear and attempted to restore the past. Another used the same conditions as catalysts for evolution. The environment was identical. The internal response differed. The highest timeline is not an external destination. It is an internal configuration. When we speak of multiverse responsibly, we are not claiming cinematic universe jumping. We are describing how different decision patterns create different life trajectories. Two future versions of you can exist, shaped by repeated habits. Understanding alone is insufficient. Knowledge without practice produces temporary clarity. True transition occurs when insight becomes repeated behavior. Identity is built through repeated internal narrative. The brain seeks coherence between self-image and action. Perhaps the final message is not an esoteric secret, but a direct call: release outdated identity before it becomes unsustainable. The new era may not be marked by supernatural phenomena, but by emotionally responsible adults governing their own minds. The highest timeline is not a future location. It is a present state of being. May you walk in peace, lucidity, and love. Until the next awakening.